Across the history of Forgotten Realms, there are so many amazing and worthy warriors that have made their mark upon Faerûn. Today, I've chosen 6 women who fully embody the warrior archetype from across the array of Forgotten Realms novels and lore. All of these have storied histories from some of the earliest novels and best authors who wrote for D&D in the 90s. While I know there are many more I could talk about, these 6 all bring something unique to the table and are distinct from one another. You'll notice I did not include any of the 7 sisters in this video, many of whom have warrior beginnings. My hope is to do a full video on them at a later time. I also tried to pick characters who I haven't covered in depth on the channel. I'd like to start with our heroine from Azure Bonds, which I've been reading recently and really enjoying, Alias. While Alias appears as human as you or I, she was not born, she was constructed. The nameless bard, Finder Wyvernspur, created her as a vessel to carry his songs and stories uncorrupted after his death. He gave her false memories and the voice of a bardic legend, but a sorceress, a lich, a fiend, and cultist of the dead god Moander each helped build her, and each carved a sigil into a magical tattoo on her right arm, binding her to their will. In the final moments of this ritual, Finder himself sabotaged the process and freed her along with the Sorial paladin Dragonbait. Alias woke with no memory of any of it. She stands 5'10", reddish-brown hair, green-eyed and well-muscled. In charged circumstances, she swings between seething rage and deep sorrow without warning. Created as a full-grown woman, her emotional life is still catching up to her body. Alias was designed for war. She possesses natural endurance, can fight blind, and commands nearly every martial weapon known to the realms, though she favors the longsword. A permanent misdirection enchantment shields her from divination and detection magic. Her voice is beautiful, nearly as awe-inspiring as her swordplay, and carries the legacy of her bard maker. Like many fighters, Alias can never have enough knives. On many occasions, it's a dagger from her boot that gives her the upper hand in a fight. But Alias also employs discernment and strategy, often searching for a means to victory without combat. She knows that she can't win every battle with her sword alone. Alias has a unique kind of charisma, and people often want to help her, so she is almost never without the backup of powerful allies. Much of her early journey is in the discovery of what the sigils on her arm mean and who put them there, why she loses control of herself to commit terrible acts of violence, and how she can regain control of her own body. Alias deeply distrusts gods and clerics, has a suspicious nature, and often finds herself fighting her way out of trouble. She despises slavery because she was built to be someone else's weapon. Alias could be one of the most powerful warriors in the realms if she could just remember who the hell she actually is. You can find Alias's story in the Finder's Stone trilogy, starting with Azure Bonds by Kate Novak and Jeff Grubb. Arilyn Moonblade is a half-elf warrior and an agent of the Harpers, a faction of secretive spies, sleuths, and scalds who oppose evil throughout the Forgotten Realms. She was born the daughter of a moon elf and a human and raised in Everesca, a hidden elven city in the High Forest, one of the last great refuges of the moon elves in Faerûn. She was denied a family name or rank by virtue of her impure blood. She took the name Moonblade as her own, a moniker that would eventually become common among other elves commanding their own Moonblades. Arilyn stands close to 6 feet tall, slender with angular elven features softened by her human blood. She has clear blue eyes flecking gold and is nearly scarless after decades of hard adventuring, which speaks to her skill in combat. Some would describe her as delicate and deadly, a description she has lived up to time and again. Arilyn is often conflicted by what she wants and what is expected of her by the Harpers, yet she maintains disciplined composure under pressure. She keeps her face expressionless in hostile territory, reads the room before she acts, and rarely lets emotion drive her decisions. Her combat signature is a two-handed grip that 5 years of formal training at the Academy of Arms never changed. It is instinct, honed and practiced, not a learned technique. Her style is built on speed, economy, and deception. Against larger opponents, she does not try to match them. She dodges, deflects, and waits for the perfect opening. In tight quarters, she sometimes drops her Moonblade entirely, draws daggers from concealment, and kills by any means necessary. The Moonblade itself is a hereditary elven sword, first crafted in Myth Draenor. Its inherent property is simple. It judges character. An unworthy wielder who draws it may die. Arilyn's blade passed through 7 hands before hers, each wielder investing it with a new power: uncanny speed, danger warnings, fire resistance, dream warnings, and even the ability to cast illusions over its wielder, which Arilyn uses to disguise herself. 7 powers across 7 generations. And then there is the Elf Shadow, a living entity born from the sword itself, a spectral duplicate of its wielder that can fight and kill independently. This power was weaponized by her former mentor, and the murders it committed fell on Arilyn's name. Arilyn's Moonblade also bears a rune reading Elfgate, a hidden portal to Evermeet, added to the sword's magic by her mother. The emotional through line for Arilyn is her fractured sense of self. She was raised elven, but elven society rejected her. She distrusts magic, which paradoxically deepens the conflict of wielding the Moonblade. She carries the guilt of murders committed by her own sword's entity. Because she cannot fully separate herself from the weapon, in many ways, it defines her. Kelvin Aronson, the Black Staff of Waterdeep, called Arilyn one of the most stubborn and unreasonable people he had ever met, but also one of the best harpers. You can find her story in the Songs and Swords series by Elaine Cunningham. Danica Maupoissant is a human warrior trained in a technique so elevated that it blurs the line between fighter, monk, and weapon master. Born in Westgate, she does not look like a killer. She is small, barely 5 feet tall, light of frame, with an unruly fall of strawberry blonde hair and warm, almond-shaped brown eyes. The threat she poses is not obvious at a glance, which has proven fatal for many who made the mistake of judging her by size alone. Her training began when Danica was 12 years old. Her parents were murdered by the Night Masks, a guild that preyed on craftsmen who refused to submit to extortion. Orphaned, she was placed under the care of a mentor from the eastern land of Tabot, who initiated her into the meditative and martial teachings of the legendary Grandmaster Penpog Don. This orphan child underwent a total transformation of body and will. She learned to still pain, regulate breath, master balance, and turn every movement into a weapon. Danica can wield any armament without hesitation or penalty, but her true lethality lies in her own body. Her fighting style favors kicks, motion, and relentless forward pressure. She closes distance aggressively, often laughing or shouting as she charges to unsettle her enemies. In motion, she becomes a blur of spinning strikes, joint locks, heel blows, and precise nerve attacks that can paralyze a limb with a single touch. Arrows, bolts, and thrown weapons can be slapped aside if she sees them coming. Against creatures resistant to pain or anatomy, she turns to her enchanted glass steel daggers, crystal blades balanced for throwing and close melee alike. Danica's greatest strength is control. Through meditation, she can still her body to the point of feigned death, slow bleeding, heal herself through sheer concentration, and pierce illusions as though gifted with true sight. She has resisted magical domination that has broken trained wizards and defeated a curse of chaos through pure resolve. Her mind is as trained as her body, and perhaps more dangerous. Danica is lawful, rigid, and intolerant of evil. She does not hesitate when killing is necessary, and this puts her at odds with the man she loves. She urges mercy rarely and execution when she believes it just. Her devotion to Catti-brie Bonaduce is absolute, yet his calling to faith and scholarship is not a path she shares. Danica is loyal beyond question, but she expects the same in return. Betrayal is met without hesitation. Once, she faced Artemis and Trere unarmed, their battle ending with no clear winner. When Dark Elves intervened, they fought back to back, Danica holding off multiple swordsmen trained by House Bayenri. It was Trere and Danica who came out alive. You can find her story in the Cleric Quintet by R.A. Salvatore. Havilar is a tiefling fighter, twin sister to the warlock Faraday, raised by the dragonborn warrior Mihin in the village Arush Vaim. She stands leggy and athletic, brick-red skin, both eyes burning gold where her sisters are mismatched. Her horns curl back from her face, unaltered and uncovered, a deliberate choice, though she comes from a society that expects tieflings to saw them down and hide who they are. She fights with a glaive, and she fights with style, fluid sweeping arcs with vaults and kicks. The glaive gains her advantage in combat against swordsmen due to its extended reach. She is often criticized by her companions for working flourishes into every attack, but her flourishes don't detract from her effectiveness. In her first real battle, an orc ambush on the high road, she killed 7. 2 with throat strikes in quick succession, 1 with a follow-through stab to the belly, the rest through speed and aggression that kept them reacting to her. In combat, Havilar is the aggressor. Havilar insists that every warrior worth talking about has a weapon with a name. She constantly workshops names for her glaive, kidney carver, eater of her enemies' livers, and devil slayer, to name a few. While her sister Faraday worries and her mentor Mihin plans, Havilar is an initiator. She craves company, adventure, and recognition. She imagines herself wild and carefree, the kind of woman whose laughter rings out above the crowd. People call her the cheerful one and the wild one, and she has built her identity around both. Havilar is a bounty hunter, an unapologetic showman, and a unique warrior among the legends of the Forgotten Realms. You can read about her story along with her twin warlock sister Faraday in Aaron M. Evans' Brimstone Angels series. Dahlia Sin'felle is a warrior shaped by trauma, sustained by rage, and refined through repeated cycles of violence and survival. Her strength is rooted in endurance, fixation, and a relentless drive to keep moving forward, regardless of the cost. She was raised in the Shakebrook Sindalay clan. At 12 years old, her village was destroyed by Netherese forces. During the attack, her mother was killed, and Dahlia was raped by the Shadowvar tiefling Herzgo Alegni. She later gave birth to his child. Dahlia used the infant as bait, drawing Alegni to a cliffside confrontation and throwing the newborn into the void, in an act meant to hurt Alegni, but one that would haunt her. From this moment, Dahlia hardened herself into a warrior and eventually entered the service of Saz Tam of Thay, aligning with powers that allowed her to hunt Shadowvar openly and without restraint. Vengeance was not a phrase of her life, it became its organizing principle. Dahlia's appearance is deliberate and confrontational. Her head is shaved clean except for a single dark braid threaded with red. Diamond studs pierce her ears, symbolizing a personal ledger of lovers she has killed or intends to kill. Her physical appearance aids to assert dominance over her opponents, which is everyone. Her personality is governed by ritualized self-destruction. Dahlia forms intimate relationships with the expectation of violence, using closeness as a controlled descent toward death. Each relationship follows the same pattern. She enters it anticipating a violent end. When that violence does not come, she initiates it herself. In combat, Dahlia is aggressive and uncompromising. She wields Kozaz's Needle, a transforming polearm capable of shifting between a staff, flails, and segmented forms similar to nunchaku. By striking its sections together, the weapon becomes charged with lightning. Kozaz's Needle allows her to dominate space, dictate tempo, and apply constant pressure. She thrives in close quarters chaos, overwhelming opponents through reach, momentum, and relentless pursuit. Her presence in the wider history of the realms is largely destructive. While in the service of Thay, Dahlia plays a central role in the chain of events that lead to the release of a primordial beneath Gauntlegrim and the destruction of Neverwinter. When she resists further control, she is punished, discarded, and hunted, reinforcing a pattern of powerful factions exploiting her rage. In the company of Drizzt Do'Urden, Dahlia's worldview and fighting style are pushed to their limits. For a time, she almost resembles a trustworthy companion, but that stability does not last. Dahlia's story is tragic and cyclical. She survives every breaking point, but never escapes the patterns that shaped her. She is one of the most formidable warriors in the realms, standing toe-to-toe with Drizzt and Artemis Entreri, yet her strength is bound to the same instincts that continually undo her. Dahlia Sin'felle's story runs through the legend of Drizzt, beginning with the Neverwinter saga and resolving in The Finest Edge of Twilight by R.A. Salvatore. Catti-brie began her life as a fighter, a human girl orphaned after a goblin raid that took her parents. She was adopted and raised by Brunner Battlehammer and the dwarves of Mithril Hall. Her upbringing was defined by discipline, endurance, and communal responsibility. She learned to work, to listen, and to endure long hours in the dwarven mines before she ever learned to fight. That dwarven culture shaped her outlook permanently. Practical, grounded, and emotionally steady, she carried herself with restraint even as a young girl. Physically, Catti-brie was athletic but not imposing. Of average height and build, she relied on coordination, stamina, and willpower rather than raw strength. Her long auburn hair and blue eyes became recognizable traits, but it was her composure under pressure that truly defined her presence. She moved with purpose, learned quickly, and adapted to hardship without bravado. Her earliest defining arc as a warrior began in fear. As a teenager, she was captured by the assassin Artemis Entreri, bound, interrogated, and forced to travel as his prisoner. Catti-brie was terrified, fully aware that she was utterly outmatched. Yet that journey became her crucible. Over time, she learned to master her fear, to observe Entreri rather than cower before him, and finally, to act. Her escape near Mithril Hall was a triumph of courage that allowed her to stand as one of the companions of the Hall. From that point forward, she never again allowed fear to define her. During the rediscovery of Mithril Hall, Catti-brie claimed her signature weapon. Though Regis discovered Tolmaril the Heartseeker in the ruins, it was Catti-brie who wielded it. The enchanted bow became her defining weapon. Uncanny accuracy, battlefield awareness, and calm under pressure. She trained relentlessly in combat beside the companions of the Hall, learning through necessity rather than theory. After Wulfgar's death, she followed Drizzt into the Underdark, unwilling to lose another friend, braving Menzoberranzan with little more than resolve and Guinevere at her side. During this time, she wore the Cat's Eye Circlet, gifted by Lady Alestriel, giving her the ability to see low light in the darkness. This was a great boon, helping her to fight the Drow and other terrors of the Underdark. It was Catti-brie herself who brought down the great Bayenri Chapel before escaping Menzoberranzan with Drizzt and claiming the sentient blade Khazad-dûa. With this blade, she trained directly under Drizzt as a swordswoman, expanding her skill beyond the bow. Her duel against the barbarian Berthgar and his Flamberg positioned her as a fighter with few equals in the north of the Sword Coast. For 6 years, beside Drizzt, she hunted pirates across the Sea of Swords, serving as a crow's nest sharpshooter aboard the Sea Sprite. By the time she returned to Icewind Dale, Catti-brie was no longer a survivor learning to fight, she was a veteran warrior. While Catti-brie would later become a spell-scarred wizard and the chosen priestess of Mialiki, her pre-Spell Plague arc shows her as one of the very best among the warrior women of the Forgotten Realms. Her story can be found across the entirety of R.A. Salvatore's Legend of Drizzt saga. These are some of my favorite warrior women from the Forgotten Realms. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments which characters you'd like me to cover in future videos. If you're interested in stat blocks for D&D 5e for these characters, I'll be building them over on the Drow Historian Patreon. If you become a $5 patron, you'll get all of the characters and weapons I have been building for over a year and new stat blocks each month. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for more lore from the Forgotten Realms and the Legend of Drizzt.